Namaste and welcome to Future Leaders, produced by Today's Youth Asia. In this show, we discuss visionary ideas, we talk about innovation, we inspire youth leadership, and nurture concerns for a better world. My name is Drishti. Today, we have the privilege of having with us Mr. Santosh Shah. Mr. Santosh Shah is the founder and president of Today's Youth Asia. He's also the anchor and producer of the television talk show Par Talks. Diplomatic Courier magazine, published from Washington, D.C., and Young Professionals in Foreign Policy organization published the names of the world's top 99 most influential international professionals under 33. Mr. Santosh Shah has been named in the list of the top 99 under 33.
When you first presented your ideas, was it difficult for you to make the people around you take your ideas seriously?
We started in 2002, and it was easy convincing the young people. What we did was a group of us visited maybe 20-30 different schools and colleges in Kathmandu. At that time, extracurricular activities was considered as a hindrance to education. And so it was quite difficult explaining the schools and principals. But it was easy convincing to young kids because they kind of felt a need for it. They felt that was missing in their education. I went to my own ex-school, Buranjan School, and I talked to the graduating A-levels at that point. And then out of 60 of them, 40 of them signed up. They said, right after our exams are over, we'll come and join you. So that was the easy part again. And then we went to other schools like Malpi Institute and Brihaspati Vidya Sadan and a couple of other schools also, like Padma Kanya, we had some students from there. And we formed a group. So in late 2002, by December, we already had a group of 60 young people who believed in my ideas. And that was a very good start. And then what we did was we divided 60 young people into 30 groups. Some would work in the office, and most of them would visit different corporate houses to ask for advertising for the upcoming magazine we are going to put out. And some of them would go and visit different schools to see if other students were interested in getting the leadership training that we are providing, and to be a part of the youth forum where you could come and discuss your ideas. Now when they went, they had, horrible experiences. They had tough time, and so did I. We used to go and ask somebody to come and be a speaker and train for free to our kids. And a lot of people whom I had read in newspapers and magazines and seen on television and had respect for, during 2003 we lost it, because I was quite surprised that how did they put brilliant answers in the interviews out in the media, but they couldn't understand simple projects that we were trying to put out. Most of the time we were questioned like, who is your father? And I would say, what does that matter with our ideas? So they cared if my father was a minister or a big businessman. And then it didn't matter to them that we were the children of common citizens of this country. And when it came to funding or sponsorships, they would say that, what if we give you the money and you run away? And we told them, that, do we look like the guys who are ever going to run away? But they wouldn't trust. What was worse was when they asked, what is your credibility? Just because you belong to certain ethnicity and just because your parents are not up in the mainstream of the country's leadership. Those were the tough parts, especially when it came from the people whom you considered until that day a prominent figure in this country. And so those were the difficult times. But it was very difficult, even until last week, I would say. Certain ideas that we presented. When I was advising the UN, I was always giving odd ideas. I gave odd ideas because I thought they would work. Maybe until then, it was not taken seriously. But now, after the Diplomatic Courier magazine and Young Professionals in Foreign Policy organization have published the list of world's top 99 under 33 in terms of foreign policy and international professionals and leadership, I think now different organizations and individuals will think that these guys have certain ideas, And I'm saying they because I'm sure the experience that I went through, most of my fellow 98 must have also have gone through. But now this kind of gives us a status where we can say that, see, we are recognized, our ideas are recognized. If we did the same thing that others did, probably would not be in the list. We did something unique and it worked, and that's why we are recognized. So now I sense that from next week onwards, we will be taken more seriously. And that's why I think that now we can invite people from abroad and share our ideas. I didn't do that until yesterday because it's not a good idea to experiment on others. It's a good idea to experiment on oneself, which we did, and we have a success story. So now once the experiment was successful, we can tell that others can use it as well.
Now, as you have been internationally recognized, do you plan on settling abroad?
I had many opportunities in the past as well when I was just starting, and there were also instances where I felt very threatened working in Kathmandu. There was a lot of fear among my people about what could happen next, and there were also scenarios where we struggled very difficultly with finances, with human resources. So if in those environments we didn't leave, I don't think we are going to leave now. No matter what, I don't think I'm leaving Kathmandu. Of course, that doesn't mean I'll not be traveling. I'll be traveling. And second thing is, I'm more interested in inviting people from abroad to come to Nepal, see what we are doing, and teach our young kids what they are doing. I don't want to have this big ego that we can provide and we cannot receive. And I think in friendship it's mutual, you give and take. In partnership it's mutual, you give and take. But at the same time, I don't want to stay in that old bracket of being a country with a lot of rich beggars. You know, I had a friend traveling from abroad just last month, and she asked me, we don't see as many beggars in the streets as we see in other developing countries. And I said to her that it's because all the beggars are in the big offices. They go, and the moment they see somebody from Europe and America, they go with the proposal the next day. They always have the proposals ready. And no matter whether they are going to do the project or not, sometimes they don't even know what they're going to do. And most of the time they're not looking at what they can provide. They're looking at how much money they can grab and they can spend for themselves. And what is more surprising than that for me is I don't understand why the donors don't look into it. They don't see the simple fallacy that where they're cheated. I mean, I would have sleepless night if I know that somebody has cheated me. And for me, justice is very important. My grandfather was the judge in a village where people used to come and settle the disputes in front of him. And so that's how I grew up, seeing him give justice, and people trusted in his justice. And so it's not justified that our citizens take money on behalf of certain population without consulting them, without letting them know, going to villages, taking pictures and using that. I mean, can we go to developed countries, take pictures of the people there and just use it to beg money from some other countries? I think we could be sued to the court for that. So what's the difference between their citizen and our citizen? I don't see much of a difference. So as I said, like, next plan is going to be to look into global partnerships to raise the status of the Nepali citizen. When I go to villages, I see that sometimes people have water supplies, they have enough food, they have a house to live in. Of course, education and health is missing. That's something we have to work on. Otherwise, we really don't need skyscrapers in Nepal or big cars floating everywhere. We are a happy country, and we can tell the world about it. Our needs are very, very less. I don't want to advocate the fact that you should never leave Nepal. You should travel abroad, whether for your studies or for your exchange programs or for a short course, because that's how I myself widened my own horizon, mental horizon. When I went abroad, I saw what are certain things that we could learn from other countries and what are certain things we should not learn from other countries, and what good we have and what good we don't have. So it's a good education, traveling abroad and learning things there. But it's also better that we exchange. We invite people from abroad and we share what we have as well.
The foreign policy of Nepal 50 years ago was one of the most significant policies. So how much has it differed now?
Foreign policy of Nepal is one of the best, the way it was designed, because being in between big countries like India and China, and also having relations with big democracy like America and countries like Islamic countries and Israel, which are at conflict. It's quite amazing what our grandparents' generation did. We should acknowledge their intelligence and their dedication to the country's sovereignty and security. We haven't had any war with any other country in many decades. And we are one country where people from all different religions, all different countries want to come and visit and not worry about their security while they are here. Even during the Civil War, not a single tourist was hurt. And we may think that it's a part of tourism, but I don't think the rebels considered tourism as something they should not involve in the conflict. Tourism was involved, but then they didn't harm any tourists, because that's how our foreign policy was designed from the past. And also, if we look at our own old scriptures, we treat our guests as gods. And I wouldn't put that high as gods, but I would definitely say that we should treat our guests respectfully. So all this has contributed into Nepal's very stable foreign policy. But after the peace agreement was signed in 2007, and in 2008 when monarchy was abolished, our leadership didn't have anybody to blame to. And that's where they started blaming the other governments interfering too much into Nepal's politics. Now, interfering into some other countries, it's a part of diplomatic and foreign affairs game or work. When you go to a different country, I mean, if in 10 years, if we become a very developed countries, and if foreign policy is a sector that I would be involved in, I would be happy to deal into, the serious issues of other countries, because it's all about win and game, war and game scenario. And so in last few years, our foreign policy has, I would say, come under a red alert, or at least under the radar. I wouldn't say under the threat, because the international partners that we have, other governments we have good relations with, they understand that we very much welcome our international partnerships and cooperation. Unfortunately, that's pretty much dominated by the begging culture we have in our country, which always puts them in a higher position. But again, that's not something I'm very comfortable with. Since the inception of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we always had career diplomats. We had people, citizens who studied international relations or politics or economics and joined the Foreign Affairs Ministry through on a merit-based examinations. And then they would scale up in their career, in the posts, and someday they would become ambassador. By the time they become ambassador, they have already traveled to many countries. They have dealt with many foreign delegations. They know their job very well. But in the last 10-15 years, we have had career diplomats within the ministry and in the Nepali embassies abroad. But what has happened is, when it comes to appointing the ambassador, the appointment has been mostly like they appoint the ministers. And it's disastrous, because most of the ambassadors who are appointed politically, they don't have good academic background, not to mention the foreign affairs expertise that they lack. There has been instances where, I interview various ambassadors on my show, Power Talks, where I hear a lot of grievances that they have tough time even communicating with our government through the ambassadors that our politicians have appointed. So I would think that these are the two areas where we have to be a bit careful about. But again, it's not a very permanent problem, because we haven't signed off any treaties with other countries, where we haven't really signed into any conflict with other countries. So as long as it's not put on the paper, we are pretty safe. And young people like us should enter into Ministry of Foreign Affairs and not take the political interference from our own political leaders to start with, and then we get into not taking political interference from any other government. It's very important that we keep our sovereignty intact. And one of the most prominent office in our country is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, to help do that. And as long as young, patriotic dedicated young people like us don't enter, we're not going to achieve this.
You have been awarded with a very prestigious award. Could you tell us about your journey till here?
I started my school in a small village in Sarlai. I went to a government school, and then my parents were very particular about education. They realized that if we had education, we could have a better life. And they are farmers, and at some point I still want to get into agriculture, because I think if the farmers stop farming, then there will be food crisis in the very first place. Then of course there is the whole increment in the population and all. So ultimately I do want to get into farming. That's my plan for 2012, pretty next year. I don't have to wait until I am in my 80s if I survive that long. But I was lucky to be selected by Burhankan School in Kathmandu. That's what brought me to Kathmandu. The school exposed me to a lot of extracurricular activities. It gave me an environment to be creative and try out my ideas. While in grade 9, we initiated something called mock parliament and UN mock session. I was 15 years old then, and that went pretty successful. We involved the United Nations, and then we invited other schools also to participate. And while I was at Burhankan School, we also initiated during the vacations health projects and other projects where we would go to villages during our vacations and try to understand the reality of life in rural parts of Nepal. Most people, when they enter into an elite atmosphere, whether that be an elite school, we alienate ourselves from the rest of the population. We think we are better, but we don't realize that ultimately we have to go to the grassroots, no matter what field you choose. You get into politics, get into diplomacy, get into the development sectors. Even if you have to sell a product by working in a multi-corporate, you still have to understand the mindset of the grassroots people, because that's where nowadays a larger amount of money is. Maybe the amount is low, but the numbers are very high. And India, which was considered a very poor country in the past and a country with no markets for international goods, right now the whole world is looking into India's middle class population to sell all the products. So I mean, I didn't know all this back then when I was 12, 13, but we used to go to villages and talk to villagers about health issues, about why they should send their children to school. Because even now, a larger population in the villages, they think that education is a luxury. They don't realize that it's a need. And how do I know that being in Kathmandu? Because I spent my time in the villages during my early age. But of course, I cannot hold on to that knowledge and think that that's the picture of the rural village, because the civil war hadn't started. The 10-year-old civil war has really wrecked the culture, mindset of the villagers in most parts of the world. So last year in 2010, I traveled. I did extensive travels to Tarai, to mountains. I think I have better understanding of my life and world and my country than I was 12, 13 years old. So this is my journey with dealing with the grassroots population. While I was in Burhankan School, I met an American godfather. He kind of adopted me, and then I went to US while I was still studying in A levels. So I would, for my vacation, instead of going to my rural village, I would go to New York City, and I got to be a part of his media company and PR company, and also the non-profit work that he used to work with the UN and the peace sector. That exposed me to the international arena of leadership in corporate sector, in media sector, in social sectors, in development sectors. And then in 2002 I decided that I will not go abroad like most of us do. And then I started Today's Youth organization, which later turned into Today's Youth Asia in 2007. And we started with a small platform in a restaurant and a coffee table with discussing current affairs. And today we have more than 40 projects running every month. So in 10 years, that's where we have reached. And now I see that instead of me traveling to other parts of the world, I see that a lot of people travel to Nepal to understand our works, and even to meet me and to see what we are doing, be a part of our television program and other projects. So it's a good achievement that we have given a U-turn to the current scenario where people leave the country for opportunities abroad, and right now we are trying to create opportunities here, not just for the Nepalese but also for other people from other parts of the world. And there is not a single month right now where we don't get visitors from other part of the world who come to see what we are doing. So I take that as a huge achievement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Santosh Shah, for being with us today and for sharing your insightful thoughts and views. Thank you very much. We look forward to your feedback. Our email address is youthtya@gmail.com. We look forward to meeting you next week. Have a nice week. Namaste.